Well, so happy start of the week, or I hope you're having a good day whenever you see this. First and foremost, thank you each and every person that pops in, subscribers and so on, the people that continue to check me out. I appreciate you very much. And for the newbies that's just popping in, it's good to see you too. So I hope you enjoy. And if you do, make sure that you like the video. And yeah, we'll have some conversation in the comments. So you can see by the title why we're here, right? Like there's a little bit of rhetoric around Kanye West and the SoFi Stadium, followed by the UK Wireless thing, this Bully album, what it means, what it symbolizes, right? So I'm going to have a conversation with you from my perspective. Like I've been kind of watching, and I didn't jump to have any conversation about it just yet. I seen some crazy stuff, but we'll save that for another time. But let's talk about the implications, right? So originally, I was going to tackle this like a conversation around the psychology of the fans, in particular, like the type of person that is still enamored by Kanye. And I think that the shortest or the simplest way that I can answer that is kind of in that sunken cost fallacy dynamic, right? And this is when you've put something or you've invested something into a particular thing and you can't let it go. And I think that a lot of us still want to believe in the Kanye that we met originally, right? So, regardless of all of the things that are mentioned that come up and so on and so forth, everybody would love to see the day that that version of Kanye West were to reemerge. This is typical. I think that most of us as humans have this experience in a lot of different spaces. And then there are some of us that are completely unforgiving. Like once you kind of leave a bruise, you leave a scar, we kind of fall back. And I admittedly wanted to believe in the Kanye that originally showed up. And yeah, I kind of fell into that like, yeah, he's not the guy that I thought he was. I kind of went with that false prophet notion, right? Like it's like I think that a lot of what Kanye does is on the basis of what best serves him, right? What puts him in the highlight, what puts him in the number one spot. And you just got to understand that that's where he is. I don't think that that makes him necessarily a bad person. I think that he's willing to do whatever it takes. And for some people, those things can be bad. And that brings us to where we are today. Um, Again, this conversation around him doing this event. And, SoFi Stadium was a big deal, such a big deal that we have a bunch of folks having dialogue around who went. And, we got Chloe Bailey getting mentioned and dragged, and Dave Chappelle. Like somebody came up with a list, as a matter of fact, identifying the people that went ahead and celebrated um, Kanye's work. And while I get the frustration, I've kind of, I don't know where I am with a lot of things these days, but we'll thumbnail the complications of your reality versus your fallacy, right? Like I wanted to believe that we were enough of a monolith in unity that we would see a lot of things clearly in eye to eye, but we just don't, right? And that's just what it is, that everybody's not going to agree with everybody. And I think there's a certain level of yielding as far as that's concerned. uh Rambling. But anyway, the reason that I am here, I started to think about it from the perspective of what does this say monetarily? Because when it's all said and done, virtue can be overtaken by capitalism, right? People want to believe in good people doing the right thing and so on and so forth. But when it's all said and done, the green, the blue notes is the power, right? And that's where we are. And when I looked at Kanye West, the details of his concert and what revenue generation came out, it was said that the 2 days that he spent at SoFi, he brought in $33 million. Now, I didn't look at the details of it. I did not read this. This was a headline moment. So I saw it on Bloomberg and I was like, okay, like that's pretty dope. So I don't know if this is exclusive to tickets or if this is revenue in general. So I'm using the term revenue because I don't know the specifications of where this money is coming from. I don't know if it's all of the event or just the ticket sales of the event. Either way, when you think about this, we are going to look at it from the perspective of what does this mean per person that enters that building? And when I looked up SoFi Stadium, and I have notes here, so part of me looking down, when I looked up SoFi, I saw that it held 70 to 80,000 people. And so inside of the 70 to 80,000 people, that when they have special events such as the Super Bowl, right, where the stage is centered and they can fill up that entire stadium, or that entire, I think it's a stadium. Yeah, that's a stadium. It can go up to 100,000 people. And I saw a couple of pictures and someone that was providing commentary on the Kanye West experience. It sounds like he went with the 100,000 seats, but I looked up for all three before I was able to confirm. So here's what I will say. Not only did he have both of those nights sold out at 100,000 people per night, don't forget that there were over 1 million people that were interested in going to this event, right? And so when you do the math on that, and this is what I said about the wireless event, I know for a fact that they did a risk assessment, right? Like they did an analysis, they came up with the budget and figured out what was the kind of generating numbers. What was going to come with Kanye West? Is there enough profit that can come from him that's worth the risk of collaborating with him? And when we look at these numbers of SoFi, it gives an idea of what they were looking at, right? So when we look at it from 70,000 seats, we're talking across those two nights, we're talking about 236, $236 per person. When we talk about 80,000 people or 80,000 seats, we're talking about $206 per person. And then when we look at 100,000 seats, we're talking about $165 per person, right? Guess how much it costs to go to wireless? The wireless event is about $185 per day. And then they have a full weekend pass that works out to about $477 for the entire weekend. So, even better than that, not only do they have the average spending of the number of people, and remember, when we're talking about 1 million people in a queue to purchase tickets, that means that there are people with their debit cards, credit cards, whatever they need to, so that they can actually make purchases. So, 1 million people that's willing to spend $165 on you on the low end, right? Because remember, we're talking about averages. We're not talking about full scheme or anything like that. That these are people that are willing to spend money. This is not streams with somebody already paying for a membership or just happening to stumble into something else. That's not what this is. We are talking about hardcore purchases for the Kanye West experience. That says something. Even further, remember when people are purchasing tickets, things like billing addresses can be extracted. Things like phone numbers and the affiliated zip codes can be extracted. So when you start to look at what the radius of the people that are interested in coming to these events, how far are people willing to travel to see somebody like Kanye West? It says a lot. It's a lot of data. So before we had this back and forth happen with Pepsi pulling out pause and PayPal and all of these sponsors that fell off, and when the wireless director came out and said, I hope people are willing to forgive, like I was willing to, this was when I got the confirmation that the money is definitely present. And I was under the impression that they were prepared for sponsors to drop off. But Kanye, as an independent artist, and I'm going to say my opinion of Kanye is very much that he's still an egotistic guy. I don't believe that those delusions of grandeur just disappear overnight or over the course of a couple months. I think that he's wised up a bit and he is more open to listening to people around him, like his new wife, Bianca, right? Who probably is like, yeah, I'm going to leave if we keep having to deal with these sorts of encounters. And when you look at him not showing up and having conversations in the same way, it gives people the opportunity to have the perception of him that is more digestible. But when we look at, say, his show, right, he was standing on top of a globe. There's no part of his showcasing that you can convince me that he's not still grandiose and self-centered. But that doesn't mean he's problematic. And he doesn't have to be. I'm just being open-minded, right? I don't think that all of that stuff disappears as quickly as it does. And the fact that I've seen him go from we all self-conscious, I'm just the first to admit it, to wearing black hoods, I just, at this point, the only continuity in intentions that I can see from him is that as long as he's the center of attention, that's all that matters. And him being on top of that globe in his show further iterates that to me. Even when you read his letter, The amount of times that he talks about I realize and my impact and this, that, and the other, while both responsible, still riddles with grandiosity. But that's my taste. I can very well be wrong. Hence, I say maybe he's out of the space of being problematic. But inside of him betting on himself and the risk of people not liking him and people not wanting to be associated with the brand, I figured that Kanye was kind of like, yo, listen, I will front the cost and ticket sales and all these other things. Like, we will balance that out. Like, so the back end profit. So there's the revenue, and then there's the paying off the responsibilities, the liabilities that's at the event, paying off the artists that were there. And then whatever's left over, there's a discussion of what the headliner and the executives will split as far as the event is concerned. This is what I thought originally. But then the prime minister, was it the prime minister or the executive of wireless? They essentially rained down on Kanye, where they was like, "Yeah, you can't come to the UK. You'll have a problem with us." And once that came out, Wireless was like, "All right, we're canceling the event," further confirming that they were very confident in the numbers that Kanye was generating. And I would even say, for all of this to happen at this point, I believe with my entire heart that people bought them tickets out of, like, them tickets were purchased, and the revenue that they were going to get, they probably recouped, they were probably fine. This is my perception just from seeing enough business designs, right? This is when I have to say Kanye, I feel like if he were his honest self, he would know better, right? Because he said it best. Even if you in the Benz, you still a nigga in the coupe, right? Like, there is a certain level of, you couldn't have thought that they was just going to let you rock and let you just slide back into business and be perceived as this person of sound mind and positive thought just because you decided to not act out a couple months ago. And what I thought about as things were going forward and it seemed like it was going to be okay and that he was actually going to be performing still, I'm like, if this thing at Wireless goes well, I wouldn't be surprised, like, if somebody like Adidas had reached back out and decided to get back into business with him. And then it depends on how deep the ties of, and I mean this with respect, Jewish relationship actually is, because there is an immense offense to that group of people. I can say, based on what I've seen, that, like, I don't know how many black people is that mad. I remember I was one of those folks that was trying to rationalize, like, slavery is a choice. And I'm like, well, maybe he means that, like, we still hold on to the oppressions. And I'm like, nope. As I tried to hold on to who Kanye used to be, I had a battle between the fallacy of who he was and the reality of how he was showing up. And again, this is the problem that we typically have, that we're not honest about the reality in which we see people perform or show up. We try our best to uphold the fallacy. This is typical, this is routine. And this is how come we have these frequent crashes. I can't sit here and act like Kanye hasn't been, like, when we look at the Manosphere and the recent outrage that happened with the Myrids and the Sneakos of the world. They were singing one of his songs on that bus. That was last year. He apologized and then he dropped that album. So there's a level of, again, like, I want to be, and especially as a person that's stepping into the space of psychology and I'm learning about these things, but what I do know is that the only thing that you can know consistently is intention. And the intentions don't misstep for me with him. The intention is still very much, he is at the center of the universe and he's still trying to be the biggest and the largest, right? Like, and again, according to the culture, that's how you're supposed to be. So here's where we are now, where we've watched this tug of war and we are seeing this back and forth happen and pan out. And what do you think Kanye West's next move is going to be? I'm thinking that his only job is to stay cool, right? If it were me on his team, I would encourage him and advise him to still go and meet with the leaders of the UK, because I think that that's a trade-off, right? If you are interested in being revered as this sort of person, I think that you still should have a conversation with these people. Show up in the way that you claim to want to be better. I think being uncomfortable is a part of the process of being apologetic and accountable. The good thing is that he very clearly has a fantastic fan base that's going to continue to show up and show out, even if the music don't do what the music used to do. I'm not going to sit here and act like I don't got 8 pairs of Yeezys in my closet. I was a fan. Does that mean that all is what I'm like? Yeah, nah, I want him to be okay. I want him to be better. Um, but I don't plan on playing with him like that. Cause I said, nah, bro, you're not going to embarrass me out in these streets. I will not be the person that further, facilitates or put anything, behind you to make you feel like, or on set, that manic behavior that we saw happening over the last couple of years when you stopped being the center of attention. I wouldn't encourage that anymore. Personally, I feel like if it were my perspective, if you can make $33 million in a weekend at SoFi, I don't see why he wouldn't go on, not necessarily an apology tour, but a remake of Kanye tour right here in America. Right? Don't get me wrong. Like, I don't think the SoFi thing would have been cool. And I think that if he would have pulled that off at that level, oh yeah, he would have been back in good graces with a lot of people. And people would be mad. He would be controversial and polarizing. But we in a MAGA nation right now. People are desensitized to a lot of the stuff that he said. We can't pretend that people like Nick Fuentes don't have a significant following. There's a bunch of it's a bunch of literal white Christian nationalists that are running YouTube right now. It's like, well, and not necessarily YouTube, but like on Kick and all of these other things. So there is this desensitization, and I hate to say it, I'm looking at it from the perspective of like, people are tired of it, right? And because that product, that taste doesn't sell anymore, it's like, yeah, he made the shift. People want to see remorse, apologies, because we're overstimulated in aggression and foolishness. Less than a year later, well, a little more than a year later, people are having a whole conversation about, Trump and what they can't believe and how we are here and so on and so forth. And I'm like, yeah, he's doing what he's been doing. In 2016, he was putting babies in cages when he was on his aggressive immigration run, right? And now, Latinos vote for him overwhelmingly. But this is where we are, right? Like, America has been different about this stuff. And I don't think Europe is really playing that. I don't think they're really having that in that kind of way. I don't think they're going to leave room, because the impact of Nazis and whatnot was way too significant for them to kind of let that stuff slip through the cracks. And I don't think that they're willing to let their socio-political environment take a shift in that type of way with somebody like Kanye West, even if he claims to be different now. It's too risky. Wireless, I think that they did the best that they can. I think they reviewed the money, they reviewed his behavior, and they didn't announce that they was going to have him until after he performed and he didn't do anything crazy on stage. I think that there was even something that was released earlier today or a couple days ago on TMZ with Jonah Hill talking about Kanye. And so you already see where they're trying to kind of clean up his image, and they were willing to integrate him back into the systems so that he can be the economic stimulant that he usually is, right? I'm sure you people have heard about like the Beyonce effect. Concerts and things like that make people go outside and spend money in times where money seems unlikely to spend. And comes with it. Welcome to capitalism, right? So I would love to hear, everyone else's position on it. I was surprised to see how it played out, but I'm not surprised that it ultimately didn't happen. The way that it went shocked me, though. To see the executives of Wireless come out in defense of Kanye, so that it can come down to the prime minister said, yeah, nah, he's not allowed here. He comes here, we're locking him up. And Wireless responded that we are canceling the event. That is significant. That says that he drove those ticket sales. And then, from what I understand, they also said that Pepsi agreed, but then withdrew and that sort of thing. So that was a thing too. But tell me what you think. Tell me how you feel about it. I mean, I I don't necessarily hate Kanye, but I'm not comfortable pushing him back towards what he used to be. But tell me your thoughts. And in the meantime, have a good one. Talk to you later.